is a tribute to her brother's life and his struggle with cancer. And I am so excited to share this book with you today and to welcome her and my awesome literary partner, Trunis Goggins, today and just discuss this book, discuss her brother's story, and get this out there. And I want everybody that gets to watch this today to make sure that you are getting this Kindle copy today because you are going to be blessed by this story. Um, you're going to learn a lot. And anybody that has anybody in your life, which I feel like we just all get touched by this lovely big C word is what people like to call it. And you always have somebody in your family that just struggles with cancer. And I think it's going to be a good book for people to just understand that what people go through. And reading his blog that is made into this book is going to be something that's going to help other families as well as the people going through the struggle that is cancer, whether they recover, whether they go on to glory. It's just, it'll be nice to have something to read to understand the ins and outs, what people go through, both on both ends. So, welcome to the live, and I cannot wait for people to hear about this book. And what I want to start with is first tell us who you are, what you do, and then what I want to know is what made you put this book together.
Thank you, Nicole. Thanks for having me. And thank you, Trunis. I'm so glad we connected through the universe. Um, so I'm Parul. I am a general dentist in New York and happily doing my little dentistry work. Um, I'm a mom of two kids, and I kind of things turned upside down when my only sibling was diagnosed with oral cancer, and coincidentally, he was a dentist as well. And this is a cancer of the mouth. So the irony of it all, and how Manu described it, it was like the shoemaker whose own shoes broken. And this was in 2019. He did a surgery, and we all thought he would recover. He was, in his early 30s. Unfortunately, the cancer was very aggressive, and it led to his demise in the midst of COVID in 2021, early March of 2021. So actually, March 14th, 2 weeks from now, would be his 4-year death anniversary. So it's, really special that it's in the month of his death anniversary today that we're talking about this book. Um, so Manu, at the time of COVID, was getting a lot of his radiation treatment towards the end of 2020, early 2021, and he was isolated from the world. People couldn't come readily visit, and for those who have had these troubling times at the time of COVID, it was quite challenging emotionally when you're going through a life crisis such as cancer treatment. And parents were in isolation as well, having to take care of him and not get a lot of help. I couldn't travel as easily with border shutdowns. I'm from US to Canada. So Manu wasn't married, he didn't have kids, and his outlet was writing. And he started writing these blogs about his reflection of life while knowing tomorrow wasn't promised to him. And he expressed it, I really want to be published. And I said, okay, work on it. And a few weeks before his death, I found a publisher. I said, we can get this going. And he said, no, I have time. I would like to write more. I don't want to be published yet. I want to keep going. And unfortunately, he died very suddenly. And when I entered his house 2 days after his death, everything was the same because he was rushed to emergency and went to hospice the next day and died. And everything was the same. The sun rose, birds were chirping, TV is on with the regular shows. His blanket that he used was still there. Medicines by his bedside, dirty dishes in the sink, food to be eaten. Everything was the same, but his life was interrupted. And that's where the title of the book came from. And I got to reading his writings again all over because he would share with them with me, but then I read them collectively. And that was his desire, and I couldn't help him get an earlier diagnosis, couldn't help my parents during the treatment, couldn't do anything. I felt failed. And so came that, you know what, this is last wish. And if I could have done anything for him, let me make this a reality. And and that's how the book came. And he called it the Dua Survival Guide, and that's where the subtitle comes from. But it was his conception. I followed it through, and I ended it with an epilogue about what happens to a family once you lose a loved one, how much loss that there is.
I love that. And I we make plans, and the plans don't always happen the way that we want them to. And the fact that you were able to pick it up and finish it for him, first of all, that could not have been easy because you were in the middle of grief. You were in the middle of you just lost your brother. And I'm sure some of it was a you had to do it. You knew this was something that he wanted done. And I mean, I can't imagine just how you felt. I mean, you knew it was his heart project. You knew that this was almost like his dying wish. He wanted this done. So I'm sure in the middle of your grief, you had that passion that, he wanted this done. I've got to get this done. And the fact that you end it with your personal part of what you and as a family member went through, and your side of it, because that's important as well. And anybody reading that is going to understand, it's not just one or the other. It's not just this person's going through cancer, it's the family goes through it with them. And there's
Correct.
there's a lot of story there, and I just love that. Triniss, what do you got to say? Because I know you've
You
in
know, I read the book, and like I said, we're working together on a new book as well. And when I met her and I pulled up the book just to say, okay, just to as I was just like kind of seeing who this individual was, and one thing that got me about the book in general was not, I mean, there is the grieving process, yes, but the strength of the family. Um, your family is extremely close, and it wasn't just that your brother had cancer; it was everybody had it as well, and even as your brother's life goes on in so many different ways, and it's funny how you call the book Life Interrupted, but it's almost like life modified a little bit because the legacy, the job, the mission that your brother had lives on, and it lives on even, and it's growing and maturing every day even after. And I think this book is an inspiration to so many different people, even if you're not suffering through cancer, or your family's not suffering through cancer. It is completing the goal. It is family togetherness. It is struggle. You could take the struggles of your brother, and you can associate it with any struggles that you may be going through in life, and that is what's so inspiring about the book. And also, it's the story, this is a story of love, and it's a story of love of two siblings. It's a story of love of a family. I don't want to get into now as much. I'll let you get into that. But it's also the story of love between parents and a son, which is just very touching. And I think that this book covers not only the struggle with oral cancer. It actually chronicles the story of a complete. And I know your brother's life was cut short, but it actually shows, this book is actually the it's a story of a complete life, of a whole, just over. I mean, it's a whole life. It really is. And so much was accomplished in such little time. And a lot of people would envy that. Honestly, they would. Mhm.
Yeah, it was a like Nicole said, it was a part of therapy, like writing and getting his story out there. And cancer doesn't affect just the person who has it, and I talk about Manu bearing the scars of cancer, and I talk about the invisible scars, the unseen struggles. Family dynamics change, protocols change. At some point, if a parent is going through it, the child becomes the parent. There's so many different dynamics that change with cancer. And this book was, yes, it was his story, but I also wanted his perception of life. But I also wanted people to know that he was more than just his cancer. And, I wanted to share with the world like who he was as a person before cancer took him away.
Mhm.
Cancer didn't define him, he defined himself and his strength. Yeah.
Yes. No, I love that. And I'm sorry. I know I look like I'm busy over here, but I'm putting things in the chat. Sorry. I found the live stream. So we're good. We're good to go. Um, yeah. And so I would like to learn more about your brother. So tell us about I mean, I know he was a dentist. He had, all of that. I know he had cancer and he passed away, but tell us about your brother.
So Manu was, we call ourselves global nomads. We've lived in 5 different countries, and Manu was actually born in Abu Dhabi and moved to Canada and Calgary in early teens. He was just, he used to play rugby. He played for a provincial Alberta in high school, and they were undefeated under 19. And even though he was like 5'2", he was stocky, and they called him the tank. You could not budge this boy. Like I would see him go in for the scrimmage, and I would be like, "Oh my God, I've lost my child, my brother," because he was almost 8 years younger than me. And I'm like, and he would come out of there. You could not move him, and that's how he was in life. He was very like black and white. There was no gray area. He knew what he wanted. He went for it. He was a strong friend. Like friendship would really like he was your champion if he was in your corner. He would support you all the way through. And he was funny as anything. He would mimic, he would crack jokes, he would have this dry humor. Like he'll say a line and then he'd have a smirk on his face. His eyes would like light up. He was just a fun, loving, loved life to the fullest. He would, every sport you can imagine, couldn't beat him in badminton, in squash. He loved golfing. He picked up kayaking during his last days. It got him solitude and got him peace. He was just a fun loving, let's live life to the fullest. Let's do the things we want to. He did everything. He had a go kart. He would go out go karting. He bought the Porsche. He would go out, riding the fancy car. He just lived life. So, and when I think about, yes, his life was short, but he did everything that he wanted to. He never had any, I don't think there was any regret that he didn't live it fully. And that's when, even in his writings, he never complained that his life was cut short because he lived it to the way he wanted it. And then, just like a typical younger brother, he's like, "Here, you're the older sister. You do all the work. You publish the book. You get it out there. I'm gone. Here you go. Here's the manuscript. You take care of things from now. I'm out." So I had fun, and he did. He really enjoyed life. Foodie, loved, and he wouldn't be like, "Oh, I'm coming to New York. Take me to the Michelin star. Take me to this and this celebrity's restaurant." Never about that. He's like, "Where's the best pizza? I'll go to the corner and have it standing outside. But what's the best food?" And it was all about quality and just genuineness rather than like the superficial facade with him. It was just very, very clear and clear.
Wow. What a lesson we can
Yeah.
all learn from that. Um, there's so many people walking around today with a woe is me attitude, with oh, this happened to me today, my life is over, blah, blah, blah.
Yep.
And, living life to the fullest in the middle of that kind of diagnosis is a testament to who he was And I think that's amazing. I love that
Yeah.
he grabbed every single moment of life and wrenched everything out of it that he could. And I think that is
Right.
amazing. I think that's amazing, and what a testament. And I love that you said he left me to do all the work. That's perfect.
Yeah,
And
he's like, you take care of the parents, you take care of your kids,
I had time,
you take
right?
care of the book, you talk about oral cancer. I'm out. And it's interesting because he was asked to speak at the Alberta Dental Association meeting, and that didn't happen because of COVID. And then, subsequently his death. But I actually spoke and I read his words, and I kept thinking, I'm like, this was your thing to do. But yes, very typical younger brother. So I giggle at that sometimes. But yeah, he lived. He even throughout you're right. He never thought like, "Woe is me! Oh my God, tomorrow's not." And at no point did he sit there and wallow in at his fate. He was like, okay, this is what it is. I accept it. I'm not going to give up without a fight. I'm going to fight. I'm going to get all the treatments. I'm going to try all the protocols. I'm going to change my eating. Like he loved chocolate. Oh my God. This man would take like Lindt chocolate and he would put it in the fridge, get it cooled, and then once everybody was kind of done with dinner, he would get it out and just enjoy it in peace, not share it with anybody. Like, and he stopped eating chocolate during his cancer treatment because he's like, chocolate has sugar, sugar, increases cancer cells. So he avoided that. So like he was very determined how he wants to live, and he kept fighting. He was like, I'm going to do whatever I can to eliminate and get as much time as I can. But it'll be okay if I have to go tomorrow. I'll be fine with it. He had made peace with that somewhere.
I know
Um,
your brother, but I will say this: chocolate, and then you told me about Swiss Chalet. We
oh, yes.
out and gotten fat together for sure. There's no doubt about it. I would have loved hanging out with your brother. We're both
Yeah,
short, and we both love sports. I mean, seriously,
we both love sports. You would
we
have hit it off.
would have been great friends. Absolutely.
You would have. And oh my God, we celebrated everything with Sushale, everything. And as growing up, he was a little bit on the heavier side. He leaned up in after college, but everything, even as a dentist, when he celebrated his Christmas parties, he would be like, well, I'm not taking you anywhere fancy. I'm going to take you somewhere that's good food and good atmosphere. Swiss Chalet it was.
That is the best food. That is absolutely the
Yeah.
best.
Yeah, so he always the quality of the food mattered, and I mean the quality of anything mattered over, the superficial how it appeared to be. He's like,
Mhm.
I can go to a Michelin and they'll give me this small little portion and they're going to charge me so much for it, and I'm going to come home hungry. I'm going to go where I get a good food and yummy and it fills my stomach and everybody has, it's chill atmosphere, and yeah, that's he loved. And his other love, like he never gave up. His other love was Legos, and he was gifted like this, I don't know, 3,000 piece Batman Lego, and everybody would come and visit him. He would be like, okay, I can't walk, I can't talk, I cannot go out, it's cold. So he would just sit there and build Lego pieces and connect with his friends in some way. Like he found a way to continue his love of what he enjoyed, and still, maintain the friendships and maintain the connection in some way. And of course, he left that for me to finish. I finished it for him, but but yes, he did everything to his heart's desire, and at no point do I ever regret that. That he didn't get married, he didn't have children. That was not what he wanted. He wanted to live. He started his own practice. He bought his own house. He bought the Porsche, he got the dog. He did what he wanted, not what society would entail to tell him what to do.
Now, with you, you were a dentist obviously before his diagnosis. You now are a specialist, or you actually do a lot of. You're a subject matter expert, I should say, in oral cancer. Was this was the your brother? Was that the catalyst of change for you, or?
Absolutely. Because when he was undergoing treatment, I remember my dad asking me, when Manu was first diagnosed. This was in 2019, his initial diagnosis. And the backstory is that my dad lost his dad very young. He was maybe a year or two when my grandfather died. And he doesn't know his dad. And he was the only child with my father. And his only parent died when I was 14 to pancreatic cancer. So for my dad, who's not a medical in the medical field, his only close reaction to cancer was death. He saw his mother suffer, stage 4 pancreatic cancer, and how devastating. And this was when she was in India. And so that was his only interaction with cancer. And so when Manu was diagnosed, his first question was like, "Oh my God, is Manu going to die?" I'm like, "No, Papa, it's just a small thing on his tongue. They'll remove it. They'll give him surgery. He's young. He's only in his 30s. He's no like other issues like diabetes, heart disease, or anything. He's going to." And I know cancer survivors. We all know cancer survivors, right? I have friends who have cancer survivors, stage 4 breast cancer. I know a stage 4 oral cancer. Like, I know people, and I'm like, yeah, Manu's going to be great. He's getting treatment done in Canada. It's not in India. There's so much advances that's happened in 30 years. He's going to be fine. I assured him that. And, um, and as he was going through treatment, and things started failing, I started reading up more on it. It's because, we are only told to diagnose it. We're not told to treat it. I'm a general dentist. I'm not a specialist. But as Manu was going through his treatment, there were so many things that I felt like, oh my God, I should have known this. How do I do nutrition, like sugar? How do, he has his tongue changed, right? Half his tongue was removed. He had a graft. He had to learn how to speak, and how to swallow. All the functional change. You get radiation burns, then the skin is too tight. You can't do certain functions. And as I was more into Manu's treatment, learning about immunotherapy, and I started to educate. And when Manu was gone, there were steps missed, like he didn't get a biopsy in time. And had he gotten an earlier biopsy, there's no clinical test to diagnose cancer unless you do a biopsy. That's the only way. There's no like salivary test. There's no endoscope. We're not doing any like colonoscopy or pap smear. So the only way is you see a lesion and you biopsy it. And he never had that biopsy. And here was a dentist. Now I could go two ways with it. I could go, to the person who was treating him, I'm going to sue you. You did this wrong, and all, hell break loose on him. But that's not going to get my brother back, and that's not going to accomplish anything good. And instead, I chose the route. Look, he was a dentist. He didn't get the biopsy. He was in denial. We all are. We don't want to think the worst in our lives, especially when we're young. But cancer is rising. This is what we need to be looking at as professionals, healthcare professionals, dentists, other healthcare. You see a lesion, refer to the right person, try to get the biopsy, do your own biopsy. So that's what got me into it. I couldn't change the narrative for him, but I can change the narrative going further.
Absolutely.
And it gives his life a bigger meaning that here's not a loss by cancer, but here's a change in movement of cancer. And I've done so much in the field that the American Dental Association invited me to their headquarters in Chicago earlier this month to sit and keynote the first oral cancer summit held by the ADA and the American Dental Association's president, the American Cancer Association's president, the American Cancer Society were in the audience with deans and CEOs of companies and so on and so forth. So I got a seat at that table because I want to change that narrative. And it wasn't something I intended to. It was, I guess, in a way, my life's purpose due to his death. And here we are.
Yeah, and so I see that even on social media. I know obviously we're connected through social media. We're connected through different organizations of grief and things like that. You are actually out there. You are on a mission. And I love what you just said. I can go out, I can sue, I can break all hell loose on everybody, but that's not that's not going to solve anything. That's not going to bring your brother back. And it's also not going to save the lives of others. And that's what you're doing right now. You're absolutely out there making people aware. You actually made me, I mean, even during this time, I eat nothing but sugar most of the time. And now I'm sitting there thinking maybe I should, think about, my diet as well before I get that. With oral cancer, and I know that this is about the book, but I would like for you to give this to the audience. Um, Oral cancer. I recently just had an aunt die of oral cancer. As a matter of fact, we just went to her funeral in January. She died. She found out she had something in her mouth, and literally 4 weeks later, she passed away. And that's,
Sorry.
and thank you. But with oral cancer, and even what you bring up with oral cancer, is that is that more fatal than other types of cancer, or is it just like, I don't know? Can you tell us a little bit
It
about that?
is. It is. And the reason for the failure is because of the 70% of the cases that are diagnosed are in late stages, 3 and 4. And the head and neck area is so close to where the lymph system is, the nodes right here, that
Mhm.
once it spreads into the neck region, it's metastasizes very quickly. In case of my brother, he had a tongue lesion on the left side, and then within 8 months, we saw a lesion on his chest. And then by the end of 2020, it was all over his lung lining with metastasis all the way down to his pelvic area. So the thing is that because a lot of times these lesions are painless, you don't notice unless you're seeing something and you're getting checked out by a dentist. Um, it it's spreads, and the cases that are diagnosed at stage 3 and 4, those 70% cases, their survival rate is below 50%. It's a low survival rate. But if we catch these, and this is why education and getting that earlier diagnosis, if we catch them in stages 1 and 2, then we can actually have an 80% survival rate. It's a much higher. And it's just, they're painless. They get into, once it's in the neck and the nodes and you're removing half the jaw, half your tongue, like my Manu, so you will lose parts of your face. And another problem with these patients is that they have a higher suicide rate, or they have PTSD, because it changes the way the world perceives and sees you. You may
Mhm.
have breast cancer, you may have testicular cancer, you may have other cancers, but you may be able to hide those spots with clothing. But the face is how you greet, and you can't certainly eat certain foods. You may feel embarrassed to be out in public. You may have a feeding tube. It changes, mentally. So there's a lot of factors with oral cancer. But yes, unfortunately, just like your aunt, and it's unfortunate, she got diagnosed at probably a late stage.
Yes.
And, you're given 4 weeks. Like, it's just really sad when you hear of people who've had treatments that they're undergoing and they're going in for therapy and colon cancer, you can name it. They have a higher survival rate, and there's more recognition
Mhm.
for other cancers than oral cancer. You don't talk about, people are like, you died of tongue cancer? Like, what? That's that's so weird. Like, you don't hear about that as often as other forms of cancer.
Now, and then the other thing, so in order to get early diagnosis, obviously, and going to the dentist regularly is important, right? And dentists
Right.
are trained to look for certain abnormalities. Is that correct, or?
Yes. So we're looking, again, we look at it clinically, we ask questions. But if you're at home, like for your listeners, and you're like, oh my God, what do you mean? Like, can I have cancer? Especially if you have history of smoking, vaping, tobacco use, chewing tobacco, with alcohol, like these are your traditional, or if you're out in the sun, like when you're out in the sun, we know about skin cancer, right? But in the same way, you can have cancer on your lips, and that is oral cancer. So you can have basal cell, you can have squamous cell carcinoma from being out in the sun. So if you work outside, if you're in construction, or if you are a golfer, if you're a landscaper, anything that's long, you have to protect, just like people will forget to put lip balm. People will put sunscreen on to protect their skin, but they won't put lip balm to protect their lips. So it's that general knowledge of having it. Um, but it's knowing if you see something in your mouth, like just like if you see a mole and it starts to look abnormal, right? You're taught these things. You're taught to do a breast exam when you're doing a shower to feel for any nodes. Just like that, in your mouth, you notice a lesion and you're like, yeah, that, okay, I bit my tongue. Oh, I had hot coffee. Or, you had a herpetic, lesion. But if you see something that's persistent over a certain period of over 2 weeks and hasn't healed, whether it hurts or not. See, that's the misconception that cancer should hurt. It could be painless. But if you notice something in your mouth, and it's easy to check your mouth, you're sitting in the car driving and you look up in the mirror and you can see what's going on. You're brushing your teeth and you brush against a certain area. You're having difficulty swallowing, trouble moving your tongue. Like stick your tongue out, and you're like, whoa, it's shift. I can't stick it out straight. I'm moving it to one side, and I'm having earache with it. So that unilateral pain, these are just some signs and symptoms in your own body. And, we fail to, we're our own self advocate and we have to advocate and tell. So even if your dentist will look and see, just bring it to their attention. You know what? I've been having this issue. So they're also aware of it. So it goes both in hand, public knowledge as well as educating healthcare professionals what to look for.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah, there's a lot of things you don't think about. And I thank you for asking those questions, Turnus. I think there's a lot of, I love that we're getting extra info. I also want to mention in the little clip that we showed at the beginning, there are two freebies in there. There are two QR codes. So make sure you go back to the beginning and just watch that little clip, pause it. I want you to talk about real quick those two freebies that you are giving to people. They're two ebooks. There's two different QR codes that you can scan and download those books. I've already grabbed mine. But tell us what those are so that people know, please.
Sure. One is on oral cancer. So just knowing what are the facts, stuff that I talked about. Another big factor is HPV, which is the human papilloma virus, which, if you're aware or not, is the most sexually transmitted viral disease in the United States. 80% of us have it, um, which you probably wouldn't. You think traditionally of STDs as being the viral infection that for sexually transmitted, but HPV, and we can protect ourselves, get a vaccine. So these are some information that's there in the oral cancer free ebook. And the other book is on grief. Grief is not a journey to be traveled alone. Trunus, you know that very well, and I felt isolated. And, I brought up that I was a global nomad, which I loved that area of my life, the how I'm brought up in different parts of the world. I got to experience life and be submerged into different cultures. And it made me a more, compassionate, empathetic, and easygoing, because change is this constant in life. And so I had to change, everything when you move to a different country. Um, your way of living. But what it took away from me was when Manu died, I didn't have that village protecting me, acting as a buffer. Your cousins, your aunts and uncles, your grandparents. I lost my grandparents in isolation. I lost Manu in isolation. I didn't have that same group of friends who'd be like, hey, do you remember when he was 4 and he fell and he had this fight or he did this silly thing at the sleepover? I didn't have any of that, these little stories. And so I felt very alone. And that got me to complete the book, to connect with people. And that in that my journey, I realized that I don't have to be alone and it shouldn't be traveled. And you find the people. And if you're not, I became a guide to help people get that. And that's what it is. It's a free ebook on grief and just some challenges that you can have and know when to reach out.
Awesome. Thank you. Turnus, anything else that you would like to say as we wrap up?
No, other than the fact that it is a wonderful book, and you're going to hear more about her story here very soon. Um, no, I have nothing to say. And she is again, what you're doing, your crusade on health, your crusade on not only the physical health with cancer, but the mental health when it comes to grief, is definitely I admire it, and it's admirable for sure. So thank you so much for sharing with the
Thank
world your
you.
brother and your knowledge, and again, your family. I know you're global nomads, and maybe for a reason, because you
Yeah.
can definitely understand culture and share with everybody. Um, in different regions of the world, you have a connection that is necessary to spread the word. So thank you.
Yes.
Thank you.
How can people reach out to you? How can they find you? Where are you at?
Okay. Well, I have my website, which is my full name, parulduamakkar.com. And, there's all the information to reach out if as a grief coach or as for the book, speaking, or the oral cancer course. And also, I'm on Instagram at Dua. Good job. It's a pun off my maiden name.
I love it. I love it. Okay. Well, I want to thank everybody. If you have resonated with this story, which I feel like almost everybody can, share this live, share her book. Well, their book. I feel like it's not. I mean, it's his book. It's your book. It's both of y'all's books. So
Yeah, it
share this
is.
book, get the Kindle copy, share it with your friends and your family, or if you know somebody who's going through cancer right now, this would be a great book. Grab those freebies that she has. What I'm gonna do is close us out and rerun that clip so people can grab those QR codes again. But I just want to thank you for allowing us to share your story as well. And as Trunis mentioned, she's going to be in our upcoming book, Stories of Friends and Family Lost, which is coming out in May. I'm so excited and honored to be able to share all the stories that are going to be in there. But thank you so much for letting us share your story as well. I know your book has been out for a while, but I am so glad that we got to promote you and highlight you and your brother's story. And I cannot wait for everybody to reach out to you and tell you what your book has meant to them. And I just love that you are taking his story further. And, the one good thing about the Stories of series that Dr. Trinis and I have started is that we're connecting with all these people that are taking the grief that they have found, and that has been forced upon them to another purpose and turning it into something for good. And I love that everybody is doing that, and it's going to help the world and help other people is just a great way to deal with your loss. And so thank you so much. And yeah, I can't wait to hear more of the story. I can't wait to have time to sit down and actually read the whole book. I've gotten to like flip through just so I had enough knowledge for today. But yeah, thank you so much for being here. And I'm going to run the intro video and we will see you all next time.
Thank you.
All right. It is wrapping up right now. Thank y'all. All right.
Thank you. That was really